What hype?
The hype about Boobie Miles.
Now, hype is something that's not for real. I'm all real.
Winchell to Miles. Miles, running room. Mojo, touchdown!
In 1990, H.G. Bissinger wrote a book called Friday Night Lights, A Town, a Team, and a Dream. The book is non-fiction, 100% real, as Bissinger moved his entire family to Odessa, Texas for a year to chronicle their high school's 1988 football season. There was a lot of real-life characters fleshed out in the book, but none will become a bigger sports icon than the one and only Boobie Miles. A brash young running back with $1 million smile and a several $1 million physical skill set. But while many others tapped into those assets, Boobie himself never actually cashed in a single chip. Off the field, Boobie had a rough life and he struggled in school early, causing a school system in a town that was already heavily infested with racism to quickly judge dude, fail to even attempt to understand him, then just extract the physical talent out of dude and then discard him once you're done, as if dude was nothing. In 2004, the book was made into a movie, and if you're watching this channel, you've probably seen it multiple times if you're like me. If you haven't seen it, it is recommended. This video will contain some spoilers for one of the characters in the movie, but the movie's almost 20 years old now, not to mention we're gonna go well beyond what the movie covered. Either way, if you did see the movie, and even if you haven't, because he's become such a cultural icon, you probably know that Boobie Miles was that dude, but then he gets hurt. Now, what you see in the book that you don't really see in the movie is just how drastic it was when everybody in the town turned on dude. Check out this excerpt from the author of the book. It's a short quote, but I want you to really listen because this is what Boobie Miles was experiencing as a kid. So again, the author was living in a town and he talks about one day going to practice after Boobie got injured, and here's what he overheard. I heard boosters laughing one day on the sideline and sort of comparing Boobie to a horse. They said, quote, "What do you do when a horse is pulled up lame? You shoot him. You shoot him." So that's the kind of blind racism and hatred this kid was dealing with. And once you look at that, it's not surprising that things went left for Boobie after high school. The most surprising thing is that things didn't go even worse. Boobie was seen as a special case who couldn't be held to the same standard as everyone else in the classroom. Teachers made the decision that football was his only option, and a lot of people in the town worried about what would happen to dude if he ended up getting hurt. But while some worried about it, others actually laughed at the thought. They joked that if dude could no longer hold a football, he would be holding a broom because that's the only other thing he could do. They found the whole situation hilarious. They loved seeing him in a lowered state. It made them feel bigger and prouder and better. But really, they was just a bunch of lowlifes giving real credence to the phrase, "Misery loves company." Boobie Miles was treated like an urban legend, like a hometown hero. But once he got injured, he was treated like a pariah, like a useless animal. That's how they saw him. You heard that quote I just read. For Boobie, the Friday Night Lights eventually faded into a grim, dark reality. He ended up gaining weight, being hospitalized, and even spending years in prison. In today's video, we're gonna discuss all of that, plus the real way Boobie Miles actually got hurt, and in my opinion, the way things actually happened is way worse than how it happened in the movie. This is what happened to Boobie Miles from Friday Night Lights. Cue the Wayne.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright, real quick before we jump in, today's video is sponsored by Manscaped, the premium brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Years of feedback from millions of customers around the world has led Manscaped to create the next generation of growing and body trimmers. To do that, they focused on functionality and improving the grooming experience as a whole. They recently launched the new Lawnmower 4.0 and the Ultra Smooth package. So what's new? Well, the Lawnmower 4.0 still has the ceramic blades with the skin safe tech, which helps reduce nicks and cuts for a smooth experience. It's both cordless and waterproof for easy use in the shower, and it even comes with a wireless charging station and holds 90 minutes of battery life on a full charge. The wireless charging and battery life makes it good for travel, and the next feature basically just builds on that. It also comes with a travel lock feature so it won't go off in your bag. When the trimmer's off, press the on button 3 times fast and it'll blink to let you know that it's locked. In order to unlock it, repeat the process, just press it 3 times once again. It'll unlock rock and you'll be good to go. Also, it comes with these little guards. That way you can adjust for length. Now, the Ultra Smooth Kit is a simple 3-step system. Step 1, crop exfoliate. Used to reduce ingrown hairs while shaving. Step 2, the crop gel, a clear shaving gel that preps the area for a close shave. And because it's clear, you can actually see what you're shaving. Then step 3, the crop shaver, perfectly engineered growing shaver with 3 precise blades with extra wide lubricating strips and a pivoting head for all the best angles. All these products are vegan and free of sulfates and parabens. And the Ultra Smooth package also comes with 5 replacement blades for the crop shaver and a storage case for travel. So get 20% off plus free international shipping when you use promo code FlemLo20 at manscaped.com. Shout out to Manscaped once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's jump back in. So Boobie Miles had a tough start to life. Dude was born in Houston. He lived there until he was 3. Then his mom left him with his grandma when she decided to move to Oklahoma. Not sure if she had a job opportunity up there or what, but she left Boobie in Texas and she left. After a couple of years of living with his grandma, Boobie then moves in with his dad around the age of 5. But his dad worked 2 jobs. He was a plant worker and a truck driver. He was getting it in, trying to provide, but he was never at home. Now, at some point while he was gone, a woman that Boobie's dad was dating and that was staying at the house actually physically attacks a 6 or 7-year-old Boobie at this point. According to the story, she taped the man to a dresser and whooped him with an extension cord. When Boobie went to school the next day, he had whelps all over him and school officials wouldn't let him return home. Now, because this kid is physically assaulted by an adult, she doesn't go to jail, but he gets placed in foster care. At this point, his dad can't get him out and he ends up staying in foster care for almost a full year. So he kind of just sits and rots in there until guess who shows up? Uncle LV.
45. Boobie, that's my nephew out there. The boy can play some football, I'm telling you. He can block, tackle, score the touchdown, snap the ball, hold the snap, and get the extra point. The boy will fill up the Gatorade cooler, walk the dog, and paint your back court. That boy can flat out play football. Ow! And he can pass!
Boobie's uncle was a scene stealer in the movie. Truly one of the greatest hype men ever. So apparently LV found out his nephew had been taken by the state and he went to go visit him. Boobie was in a bad condition. His hand-me-down shoes were several sizes too big and he looked unkept and unloved. LV had a family of his own and between him and his wife, they was only making about $1,000 a month combined. Now that did go a little bit further back in the 70s, you know, inflation and everything. But the point remains that money was tight, but still, LV wouldn't turn his back on his nephew. LV moved Boobie in with his family. Dude had a wife and 3 daughters. As you might expect from somebody with a childhood like Boobie where you bouncing all around and you're living with this person this week and then you're with this person and then you're in foster care. It's an extremely rough start during a crucial stage in development, and that particular development bag was fumbled for Boobie, so he had a lot of trouble in school, especially early on, and Uncle LV had to find somewhere for dude to channel his energy. So LV asked Boobie if he wanted to play on the Pop Warner team that LV was coaching. So yeah, Uncle LV is the one who introduced Boobie to football in the first place, and all that background information just makes this one particular scene hit even harder than it already did. Over the years, LV would keep Boobie on the path. When he saw his nephew get frustrated and wanting to quit, LV never let him, and dude deserved credit for that. Some people felt he pushed Boobie too hard at times, but even at the peak of his cockiness, Boobie had no problem admitting that it would have never been who he was without his uncle. Boobie in real life was said to be as high energy, charismatic, and cocky as he was in the movie. And back then, he only knew how to channel that energy into one thing: football. It became his entire identity. The movie actually starts at the start of his senior season where Boobie is already a hometown hero. But only a couple of years earlier as a sophomore, dude actually got kicked off the team for missing workouts. Not in-season workouts, off-season workouts. Turns out Boobie was on the track team and he was already the man over there as a 10th grader. So when the Texas relays came around, Boobie's track coach held him out of off-season football practice. Well, Coach Gaines told Boobie to go, quote, major in track if he was gonna miss workouts. Imagine being upset that your running back run track in the off season. What coach with any sense treats that as a negative thing? He gonna get faster and he gonna be in tip-top shape. That little wing tee offense y'all ran ain't that damn complicated. He got it. But nah, Gaines actually made dude quit track. And not only that, he made him apologize to the entire team as if he had disgraced the football program by running track. Going into his junior season, Boobie was actually playing second fiddle to fullback Sean Crow, as fullback was actually the featured position over tailback in that offense.
Periman on offense, you see Sean Crow, Mike Winchell, Boobie Miles in the backfield.
Even in games where he didn't get his number called, dude learned to make do with what he got until his time in the #1 spot. There's this one game from his junior season they talk about against Periman High. In this game, dude only got 8 carries. 8 carries. And he somehow turned that into 232 rushing yards, bro. Book even talks about how Boobie's dad, who had been separated from him for some time now, was actually in the stands that night and got choked up watching his son score a 62, a 67, and an 80-yard touchdown all in one game, all on 8 carries. Boobie ended up putting up 1,345 rushing yards his junior season, but Sean Crow over in spot 1 rushed for over 2,000. And as much as Boobie was enamored with his own ability, he was actually impressed by Sean Crow as well. Here's a quote from the book. Tell the truth, he's the first white boy I ever seen run like that. Pretty bad white boy. White nigga run like that? Not like Crow. He can run. As you can see, race was always a major topic in Odessa. At one point, the black people was actually kind of like quarantined off into a little section of the town, and they weren't allowed outside of those walls. So ironically, with their school colors, everything in Odessa was seen in black and white. Now in the movie, we meet Boobie at a point where he's going into his senior season, ready to move into that main fullback spot because Sean Crow, 1 year older, had graduated. And while Sean Crow was a good player who went on to play 1 year at TCU before heading to the Marine Corps, Boobie was on another level as a running back, and dude was poised to have a killer season. I'm talking about a season for the ages. If Sean Crow ran for 2K, what was Boobie gonna do? You know, let Boobie spin. Colleges have been sending dude recruitment letters the whole summer. Boobie Miles had impressed on a level that had some calling him the best football player they'd ever seen. So you remember when Uncle LV was running down that list of skills? As much as your back porch might need to be painted, one of Boobie Miles' best traits oftentimes gets lost in the shuffle. Listen again.
He can block.
He could block. And not only could he block, but the dude had a genuine deep love for the game. It was the only thing he'd been good at. And you know how that is, man. The first thing you have some success with, that love run deep. Now the book goes into some depth about how dude kind of had this uncontrollable energy where he'd be bouncing off the walls all the time and never really stopped talking and making beats on the wall. He was great with kids, had that $1 million smile, and teased a lot, but was usually good spirited. But he could have a hard time focusing, which may have been the reason he struggled in school. But with that said, man, football was the one thing that could focus dude up. I don't think they touch on this much in the movie, but in the book, the author actually tells the story of what sold every college scout on Boobie Miles as a junior.
He can block.
The story takes place during his junior season where Periman was in the playoffs. So it's 1980s Texas. Boobie gets called a racial slur out on the field. So Boobie get pissed off and kind of start losing it. But Gary Gaines doesn't panic because he knows one thing about Boobie, and that's the fact that dude loved ball more than damn near anything. So Coach Gaines knew exactly what to say. So he walks up to Boobie and tells him that the other team is simply trying to trick him. They wanted to get him worked up so that he would get himself kicked out of the game. Embarrassed and angry that they tried to take the game away from him, the book says that in that moment, Boobie's whole face changes and he actually locks in a way that even Coach Gaines hadn't seen before. So he goes back out on the field and he doesn't even kill him in the run game because again, he's playing a second fiddle position. This is a big game, a playoff game. I'm assuming they was feeding Sean Crow, the other running back. So how the hell does Boobie end with 45 yards but impress every college scout that was there at the game? But they say the man was going crazy in the blocking game. They say he was flattening 200-pound linebackers over and over and over, showing a mean streak that the spirited player hadn't even shown as a runner. And that's when every college coach knew that there was so much more there than what Periman was actually getting out of him. Now earlier I mentioned that Boobie had struggled in school. If you're wondering how he stayed eligible to play football, it's because they basically just pushed him through gave him the answers to the test, and I mean that literally. They would give him the answers to the test just to make sure he passed. They gave up on teaching him long ago and was perfectly fine with just pushing him through the system so that he could play football and hopefully go win their precious state championship. And hey, heading into his senior season, it seemed to have been working. Dude had offers from USC, Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Nebraska, everywhere. But he had 100% of his future hinging on his physical ability. And while a lot of athletes don't have a concrete backup plan, Boobie was even worse because he had not learned anything in school and had been classified with a learning disability because that meant he would be exempt from state tests. This is how they kept him on the field. Again, no regard for the actual person, only cared about the football player. When I read excerpts from the book, I can see Derek Luke portraying Boobie Miles in my head. It's just like extra scenes. They actually did a crazy good job in this film, and the original author of the book did an amazing job of capturing real life on paper. It's cold, bro. I hope I could do something this impactful one day. The Nike versus Adidas thing in the book. Boobie giving them Mayweather speeches in the locker room from the book. As we know, Boobie had dreams of going pro. He wanted to achieve something for himself and get his uncle LV and his family a house. But check out this quote from Boobie pulled from the book. He said he couldn't ever imagine a life without football because it would be, quote, a big zero. Cause I don't know, it's just the way I feel. If I had a good job and stuff, I still wouldn't be happy. I wanna go pro, that's my dream. To be Rookie of the Year, something like that. Of course, we all know by now that Boobie never gets to live out his dream. He ends up tearing up his knee and he's never the same. In the movie, Boobie gets hurt in a crazy way. Periman is actually blowing out some team in the first game of the season. Boobie's going off. Dude done scored like 5 or 6 touchdowns in the movie. The game gets out of hand and the score is 42-7. Coach calls for running back Chris Comer, who in the beginning says that he's third string, Boobie's backup. I guess he just meant if Boobie went down, he would move into the tailback spot and whoever was in the tailback spot would slide into Boobie's spot. Maybe that's what he meant, because as a kid watching this movie, it used to always bother me that he said he was third string, and then when he can't find his helmet, they send a star player back out there in a blowout. I'm like, where is the second string running back? Where is he at? Anyway, that's besides the point. Coach calls for Comer. He can't find his helmet. So apparently their only other option is to put Boobie Miles, the star of the team, the engine of the team, the dude on which everything in this season is riding on. Their only option is to put that dude back in the game with 2 minutes left, up 40 points. Boobie goes out there and gets caught in a bad situation, gets hurt, tears up his knee. Now in the book and in real life, it's not nearly as cinematic. And once I tell you the real story, you're gonna understand why they changed it for the movie. In real life, Boobie actually never makes it to the first game of his senior season. He never got there because my man actually got hurt in a scrimmage. In a damn scrimmage, dog. That's right, on a 15-yard run during a scrimmage versus Paulo Duro High School. Now, the way the injury happens is actually pretty similar in both the book and the movie. It's just the setting. The setting is completely different because even though Periman was pretty fanatical about football, so they probably would have had an okay crowd at the scrimmage, I'm assuming that in the movie you want to get that whole stadium reaction and kind of get the look on everybody's faces and everything like that. Also, fun fact, the real Boobie Miles himself cameos in the film and can be seen right here reacting to his own injury, which is kind of cool, or maybe kind of traumatic, probably a little bit of both. So anyway, in real life, Boobie plants and tries to stiff arm dude before going out of bounds, or instead of going out of bounds, and his foot gets caught in that garbage artificial turf who been taking out ACLs, just took out an ACL, I believe, Shepard just gets hurt his knee because of that? But yeah, his leg gets caught in the artificial turf. Somebody then falls into his knee just to finish it on off. Nobody really knows it at the time because the injury was less common. But in that moment, in a scrimmage, the great Boobie Miles' football career essentially ends right there. You gotta remember, it was 1988. High school player tears ACL. That's a career. Now, the same way Boobie flips out on the doctor in the movie who tells him his knee is more serious than originally believed, in real life he flipped out on the trainer right then and there, understandably so. Check out this excerpt from the book. "You might be out 6-8 weeks, the trainer said quietly, almost in a whisper. Boobie jolted upright, as if he was wincing from the force of a shock. "Oh, man," the trainer says, "we won't know until we x-ray it. It may be worse if you don't stop moving that leg." Boobie comes back. "You can't be serious, man. You gotta be full of shit, man." The trainer said nothing. "Man, I know you're not talking about no 6 to 8 weeks. Boobie was placed on the red players bench, behind the sideline, and his black high tops were slowly united. His leg was placed in a black bag filled with ice to help stop the swelling. He turned to the trainer. "Is this gonna fuck up my season, man?" he asked with a terrified whisper. "I sure hope not," said the trainer. But privately, the trainer's assessment was different. As a trainer, he dealt with knee injuries all the time. His gut told him it was something serious, an injury that might prevent Boobie from ever playing football again the way he once had. Boobie laid down and several student managers took off his pads. In his uniform with all the different pads he fancied, dude looked like a little RoboCop. But stripped of all the accoutrements, reduced to a gray shirt soaked with sweat, Boobie had lost his persona. He looked like exactly what he was, an 18-year-old kid who was scared to death. That's why I want to be a writer. It just really hit different, bro. But reading that and then thinking about the scene in the movie where Boobie breaks down, they both capture the emotion of Boobie's harsh reality in different ways. Real life, Boobie laid on the trainer's table while the game continued around him. And in that moment, I had to imagine he felt this damn small. Whether he realized it or not in that moment, with or without the one and only Boobie Miles, Friday Night Lights will continue. Initially, Boobie got good news, with one doctor saying it just looked like a sprain and that Boobie may be back as soon as a couple weeks. But the second exam showed that he needed surgery and the injury was a lot more serious than originally thought. Instead of actually having the ACL surgery, all dude had was his toughness and his heart questioned to the point where he was essentially pressured to get back out there on the field only 2 months later, 2 months after tearing your ACL. He obviously couldn't move and the opposing team's headhunted dude. I'm talking about hit him repeatedly. He was a sitting duck. As they teed off on him, they taunted him and challenged his toughness over and over and over again. Challenged his physical toughness, his mental toughness. Meanwhile, he's dealing with an internal crisis. Remember, football was all he had. That had become his personality at that point. So now, with his knee being taken away from him, he looking around trying to figure out who he even is if he can't spin like Boobie, you know? But he's living in a place who are completely blind to those problems. They don't care at all. All they care about is winning state at any cost. And if you can't help do that, they just toss you to the side. Dude was playing on an ACL that needed to be surgically repaired and rehabilitated, a process that took no less than a year. 2 months of rest and a brace, that ain't gonna fix nothing. So he made it through a couple of games, but obviously wasn't the same as before. But despite his noticeable limp, Coach Gaines and the rest of the coaching staff had no issue tossing him out there in blowouts just to basically test out his knee. But when the team faced Midland Lee, a real challenge, Boobie had to sit on the bench and watch Chris Comer, who had now come into his own, get all the shine. After 2 quarters of not playing, Boobie almost pulled Devontae Davis and retired at halftime. When he took off his pads and began to walk out, none of the varsity coaches even tried to stop him. They wanted him gone at this point because behaviorally, he was just more of an issue, and because he couldn't help him on the field, they was uninterested in the kid. But there was one JV coach who was essentially the liaison for all the black players on the team. He went, caught Boobie, talked to him, calmed him down. And the book kind of goes out of his way to communicate that the thought was at this point that Boobie was just another black player on the team. And the coaches who had always smiled in his face and talked about him behind his back was no longer interested in faking it when they saw Boobie. What a cold reality. A kid who, outside of his uncle, has only ever felt love for what he could do on the field. And as that ability slips away from him, his biggest nightmare comes true, as all his darkest thoughts about humanity are confirmed. Most of us learn these hard lessons at some point, and I actually am jealous of the people who never had to. Boobie didn't quit at halftime, but instead waited a couple of days after. Just like in the movie, Chris Comer takes Boobie's spot and has a great season. He was said to have worked harder in the weight room and was easier to handle, so the coaches were happy. Boobie eventually has the surgery after quitting the team, and now doctors finally confirmed that it was indeed an ACL tear, and after he's officially off the team, they finally acknowledged the fact that it was a miracle that he was able to play on his torn ACL at all. Dude was literally playing on one leg, and not only that, but by him prolonging the surgery and going back out there to try to play on the knee, he actually ends up making it worse, of course. Despite that effort to play through an injury that a professional running back can't play through, all his coaches called him a quitter and used extremely offensive terminology. Not only is it uncalled for, it's untrue, it's slander. You know what I'm saying? That's cold, bruh. Raised in a religious household, he thought to himself that maybe he'd done something wrong and was being punished by God. Maybe he had been a little bit too cocky. Boobie figured that had to be why, quote unquote, everything was taken away from him so soon at that. Unlike today, where dude would get a bunch of well wishes and empathy and sympathy, an outpouring from fans. At the time Boobie was living in, which wasn't really that long ago, dude was just laughed at, teased, and insulted at every turn. One reason was, yes, dude was a bit cocky when he was on. And another reason is that he lived in one of the most racist towns, especially at that time. I talked about this a little bit in the intro, but according to the book, one day 3 boosters showed up to the practice field and said that Boobie should be taken out back and treated like a lame horse. But as if that wasn't harsh enough, another man said that when a horse pulls up lame, you don't even waste a bullet on him. These are the type of deep-seated racist beliefs that a lot of people hold. They very clearly viewed this man as like a football animal, and once he could no longer play football, he might as well be put down because they felt that his life had no value beyond what he could do on the field. And you gotta remember, the author of the book, a white guy, moved to the town, so it got to the point where they was comfortable talking like this around him. They just assumed he wasn't gonna print this. And while the author himself has expressed regret for not initially putting names on a lot of the people that said a lot of this stuff about Boobie, he actually did come back and name the coach who said, and I quote, "Without football, Boobie was nothing but a big old dumb N-word." We're talking about that deep, dark, potent racism with these dudes, man. When you hold these beliefs, it makes it impossible for you to view members of another race the same as you do your own. And it's the root of a lot of issues in this country. And it's the reason why, instead of just getting extra help when he was young and getting back on track, Boobie was written off, put in basically special classes, and essentially seen as a lost cause who was incapable of learning, despite the fact that we saw evidence that he could learn. He learned the plays, he learned how to speak, he learned how to write, he learned a whole lot of stuff. So he can learn. It reminded me of the Mike Tomlin quote from the Pivot podcast. The Odessa school system was seeking comfort, trying to say that Boobie Miles could not learn. So things would continue to go bad for Boobie. After his injury and being off the team, Boobie even got into an argument with his uncle LV and ended up moving out of the house. LV waited for him to come back, figuring it's just an argument, we'll be fine. But Boobie was at a crossroads in his life and didn't show back up to the house for a whole week. And when he did show up, he just showed up to pack up the rest of his stuff. LV still went to the practices, and now instead of loudly talking about Boobie's skills, he quietly talked about Boobie's skills. He was still saying his nephew could go pro. He just needed a little bit more development. LV was obviously hurt by the fact that him and Boobie weren't on speaking terms, but dude had already lived a life of disappointment in Odessa. When he was young, the black kids weren't even allowed to play on the team. Reason being because they went to a different school who didn't have a team and they weren't allowed to go to the other school. So LV grew up wanting to play under the Friday Night Lights, which explains why he took so much pride when Boobie actually made it out there and was that dude for a short period of time. For Boobie, the world came at him fast, even before he left high school. Dude's grades was always propped up thanks to the fact that he played ball. But now that he was no longer on the team, he was failing most of his classes. The time he missed getting knee surgery, he had to make up for, and things had stacked up on him fast. Not to mention his life as he knew it had just ended, so kind of hard to motivate yourself to do a bunch of schoolwork. According to the book, his coaches secretly were sitting back laughing at his failures. Boobie suffered all alone. not even a Twitter following to vent to. Fortunately, he and Uncle LV eventually made up, and Boobie moved back home around Christmas '88. He went to a junior college and tried to make the most of it, saying, quote, "I think it kind of teaches me a lesson. I had fame and glory and all that, and the Lord took it away. I kind of had the big head, and he took it away from me. But he still thought about what if. We could have gone to state. I could have had a better scholarship. But right now, I'm happy with what I got. I got a scholarship I didn't think I was gonna get. If I do good, I could go somewhere in a year." Boobie became the first freshman starting running back at Ranger Junior College, but his knee was never the same. With things going bad on the field, Boobie eventually went into the tank. If y'all don't know what that means, it's like when you as an athlete just get to the point where you just start going through the motions, you lose all your motivation. Eventually that snowballed and he stopped going to class and eventually flunked out of school. He tried semi-pro ball for a little while. That didn't work out, then ended up just working odd jobs around Odessa. Things would continue to go bad as Uncle LV passed away in 1998. And after that, Boobie continued to spiral. He fought to stay afloat, but with a limited skill set and the weight of his long-lost superstardom weighing him down, dude had a hard time finding consistent work that he could motivate himself to wake up and do every day. You even see some of this today with former stars whose stardom has run its course. Then they have to go out and get a regular job. Wasted talent, people like to call them. Then them same damn people go home and use their talent to watch Netflix or something like that. And sadly, after leaving for a short period of time, he returns to Odessa. You know, essentially that's all he knows. But he goes back there where a lot of people treat him like a pariah, but some treat him like a hometown hero. It's a mixed bag. Here's a recent quote from the writer of the book who has kept up with some of the players from the team, including Boobie. Boobie lived for football. He was told to live for football. His uncle who took care of him, he lived for football. That was Boobie's only persona in school, and when he lost that, I saw him dissolve. I saw him fall apart. I saw every dream he had fall to pieces, and I saw that town, and I will never take this back. I saw that town turn totally against him after loving him and praising him once they found another running back who was good or maybe better named Chris Comer, and that's when the N-word came out. He continued. I saw this over and over, and I kept in touch with Boobie since the book in 1990 for 25 years, and I don't think he's ever recovered. He continues on about how the last time he saw Boobie, he was wearing a white prison uniform, which made me think how ironic that is and how much it sucks. So when Boobie was in high school at Periman, the goal was to be the one wearing the black jersey at practice. He didn't want to be the dude wearing the white jersey. That was the backups. After Boobie got hurt, he was demoted from the black jersey to the white jersey. And I just could not get that image out of my head of him being demoted and embarrassed to have to wear that white jersey to now being demoted and embarrassed even further, having to wear a white prison uniform, you know? Sucks. In 2011, Boobie was charged with aggravated assault. Not sure what set him off, but one article says him and his stepbrother got into it. Boobie allegedly smashed dude in the head with a beer bottle repeatedly. Here's the weird thing, and it's actually a little confusing and there's conflicting information out here. But it appears that the alleged assault actually stems all the way back to 1999, 1 year after the passing of his uncle LV. Then 10 years later in 2011, he's actually charged for that crime. And then with no priors, the man is put on 10 years probation. Get out of Odessa. There's not a lot of info on this part at all, but this one article claims that part of Boobie's probation was that he was supposed to register as an offender, which he failed to do. As far as the failure to register as an offender thing, I saw that once or twice, but I just can't find anything that says why he had to register as a, like, nothing actually says what happened. And when I try to find a sexual assault case that they're talking about, all I can find is the assault case with the beer bottle. You know, it's two completely different things. So I wanted to put this in here and not like omit it from the video, but you just got to take it with a huge grain of salt because I can't find nothing to support it. But I was able to find some separate details on the whole beer bottle situation. And there is another side to that story, one told once again by the author of the book while he was on yet another visit to see Boobie in jail. He does confirm the beer bottle story, although not the stepbrother part. He said somebody was talking about Boobie's family and Boobie cracked him in the head with a bottle. He let his anger get the best of him, but it ain't like he was just out here causing problems. He was provoked, and unfortunately, he took the bait. Too bad he couldn't slap the pads on and go block the hell out the dude who was talking crazy. And like I said, despite having no priors, dude ends up with 10 years probation from that situation. According to Bellinger, Boobie starts out going to see his probation officer, but at some point he stops going. They issue a warrant for his arrest. He does an illegal U-turn, gets pulled over, boom, ends up in prison. He was sentenced to 10 years for that. Again, I say, get the hell out of Odessa. At one point, Boobie gained so much weight it was life-threatening. Dude got up to 420 pounds at one point and was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. When Boobie was in prison, he did the exact same thing he did back when he had to go to JUCO. He accepted his fate and took responsibility. It's funny because those who viewed themselves as above Boobie back in his hometown, they never did the same. They never wanted to take accountability for their actions, and as a matter of fact, the author of the book got death threats for basically just telling the truth in the book, even though he says he could have said a lot more, he could have put a lot more names in, and he tried to be tactful. But as a journalist, he said he just could not ignore all the crooked stuff that was going on. Like, it was a part of the town. It was just a part of it. Basically, there was no way to tell the story and leave that out. So yeah, once again, instead of looking in the mirror, they just sent the dude death threats. Just try to get rid of the mirror. That way I don't have to look in it. Meanwhile, the guy they turned their noses up at and called evil names has actually taken full responsibility despite being thrown away at only 18 years old. Here's what Boobie had to say while he was in jail. I could never just pick up the pieces. Every time I thought I could get it together, it just fell apart. I just let it happen. I didn't try to stay strong. Whatever happens, happens. That's how I look at it. So while he has kind of taken responsibility, you can see he was at a very low point at the time and was just kind of beside himself and accepting whatever bad thing came to him at that point. While it is very important to take accountability, we all know it was plenty of fault to go around, but it seems like Boobie was the only one who had to pay the ultimate price. And that ain't fair, but it's life, you know? People think Friday Night Lights, the book and film, were the best things that happened to Boobie, but they're wrong. Dude's life had fallen apart and now it was being published. If it happened today, maybe he can get a podcast popping, use his charisma to feed his family. But instead, dude basically walked away with nothing. He did make a whopping $1,000 off of the movie rights. Then he got sued for more child support because the mothers of some of his kids thought, hey, he's rich now. He was in fact not rich, he was broke. But at least one of the women that Boobie has kids with stayed loyal to him, and when he did get out of prison in 2018, he moved in with her and the kids. After that, I'm sure things still ain't perfect for the man, but you can see Boobie started to clean things up and kind of started to get things together. He now had a new immediate family and he got a job working for Jack Welch Recruiting. Also goes through the circuit of schools in the area doing motivational speaking, warning kids that how the game, fans, and coaches can all turn against you if you lose that ability. As much as I loved this movie as a kid, man, Boobie Miles is such a tragic story. A kid who was just used and used until he was used up. And then once that happened, it just tossed him in the trash and moved on to the next one. And the worst part of the whole thing is just the satisfaction the town seemed to get with his fall from grace. These people threw around jokes about putting the man down like he was a damn animal, but he made it through it all. And today at 52 years old, dude is a living legend. One of Boobie's kids is James Miles III. When he started playing ball, his dad was in jail, so the two had to communicate through letters. Like his dad, James plays the running back position, and now that Boobie's out, he can finally watch him play. James Boobie Miles, at 18 years old, was said to have already been at the end of his rope, but he's managed to stay strong and he's still kicking today. I just hope he found some level of peace in his life, and I really hope he knows he inspired a generation.
What hype?
The hype about Boobie Miles.
Now, hype is something that's not for real. I'm all real.
Winchell to Miles. Miles, running room. Mojo touchdown. Yeah.